Good afternoon, everyone. My name is December Bodine, and today we are going to talk about male and female sexual anatomy and the sexual responses in both males and females. This is an overview of the topics I will discuss in today's presentation. Now, before we start talking about sexual anatomy and sexual responses, we have to gain an understanding of the scientific study of sex. Yes, believe it or not, there is a scientific way to study human sexuality, and that is called sexology. We're going to take a very brief terminology class and break down the word sexology to better understand its meaning. With terminology, we always break the word down into prefixes and suffixes. Then in order to interpret the word, we start with the meaning of the suffix, the end of the word, and we attach the meaning of the prefix, which is the beginning of the word. So let's break down the term sexology. So logi means the study of, and sex means or refers to mating or gender. So the word sexology means the study of mating or gender. And just in case you're curious, the O in the middle is just to connect the prefix and the suffix. Therefore, sexology is more than just studying the physical act of sex, but it encompasses our interests, beliefs, behaviors, and functionality. Havelock Ellis quotes that sex lies at the root of life, and we can never learn to revere life until we know how to understand sex. So now you may be wondering, who is Havelock Ellis? Havelock Ellis and Alfred Kinsey were pioneers in the field of sexology, and their works changed the ways that we thought and looked at sex. Havelock Ellis was the earliest sexual theorist and scholar to pave the way for those that followed in the area of sexual research. Due to his research, he was able to conclude that many sexual behaviors that were thought of and looked at as abnormal were actually normal. He discovered that during a time where women were viewed as innocent and men were perceived as sexual savages, that this was also not true. His research showed that male and female alike possessed the same sexual desires. In addition, he clarified through his research that homosexuality was not a deviant and sinister act of perversion, but instead people were born this way, and it should not be considered criminal or immoral. Alfred Kinsey, who followed in Ellis's research by studying human sexuality through his studies on gall wasps. Now, I know that sounds a little crazy, but he was able to conclude that as every gall wasp that he collected was different, that is how we humans are as far as our sexual interests, beliefs, and behaviors. As Alfred Kinsey began to document sexual behavior of Americans, he wanted for the study of sex to be considered a valid area of study, just like any other scientific discipline. So for instance, just as we study biology and physiology, he wanted to study sexology. Through his research on human sexuality, he was able to show that there really was not a normal or abnormal sexual behavior. But just as we are all different, there were just variations of sexual behavior. According to the textbook Human Sexuality, Diversity in Contemporary America, Kinsey made 3 points about masturbation. 1, it's harmless. 2, it is not a substitute for sexual intercourse, but a distinct form of sexual behavior that provides sexual pleasure. And 3, it plays an important role in women's sexuality because it is a more reliable source of orgasm than heterosexual intercourse, and because its practice seems to facilitate women's ability to become orgasmic during intercourse. Last but not least, Kinsey wanted to disregard the labels homosexuality and heterosexuality because his research showed that sexual attractions change over the course of a lifetime. Once again, validating his point that same-sex or opposite-sex sexual encounters are just variations in sexual behavior. Sex is a fundamental part of life. We would not be here without it. This is why the study of human sexuality is important. Sex should not be a tight-lipped, secretive topic. And this will lead me into the discussion of Williams Masters and Virginia Johnson's. William Masters was a physician in the 1950s that became interested in treating sexual difficulties. He was joined later on by a woman researcher named Virginia Johnson. These researchers wanted to conduct their own research on the human sexual response. Over the course of their research, they documented more than 10,000 episodes of sexual behavior, which included masturbation and intercourse. From their research, they theorized the four-phase sexual response cycle. In the 1970s, Masters and Johnson revolutionized sex therapy by treating sexual problems experienced by couples and using behavioral therapy. So now we are actually going to discuss Masters and Johnson's sexual response cycle. Phase 1 is excitement. Phase 2 is plateau. Phase 3 is orgasm. And phase 4 is resolution. So Masters and Johnson's 4 levels of sex response relates to the female and male sexual anatomy in varying degrees. So I will actually break these down based on sexes. So first we will begin with the male, and then we will look at the female sexual anatomy to see how it relates to Masters and Johnson's sexual response cycles. The first structure we will discuss is the penis. According to Yarber and Said, the penis consists of 3 parts: the root, the shaft, and the head. The penis is also the vessel of which both semen and urine pass through to exit the body. The shaft is the part of the penis that hangs and is attached to the root or base of the penis and the head of the penis. The head of the penis is known as the glans penis. On the underside of the glans penis is a sensitive triangular area called the frenulum. Both the glans penis and the frenulum are sensitive and are important in sexual arousal. In Masters and Johnson's excitement response, the penis will become engorged with blood via the corpora cavernosa and corpus spongiosum. The corpora cavernosa and corpus spongiosum are 3 parallel columns that run along the shaft of the penis. The corpus spongiosum also houses the urethral tube that transports semen and urine. In the excitement phase, as these columns fill with blood, the penis will become erect. During Masters and Johnson's plateau stage, the head of the penis will then become engorged and swell. During the orgasm sex response cycle, the internal male sex organs become more involved in the expulsion of semen. As a male reaches his climax in sexual intercourse, the testes that have already been pulled close towards the body during the excitement stage become more wrinkled as the epididymis, vas deferens, seminal vesicles, prostate gland, and Cowper's gland begin to release sperm. According to Mariev and Hone, the authors of Anatomy and Physiology, 10th edition, the pathway of the sperm starts in the seminiferous tubules, which is where sperm is produced. The sperm is then released to the rete testis, which is a network that transports the sperm to the epididymis. The epididymis is where the sperm is matured and stored for ejaculation. At the time of ejaculation, the epididymis drains into the vas deferens, which are also transportation tubes that lead to the seminal vesicle. At this point, the seminal vesicle will release 2/3 of semen that will combine with the sperm. Semen is a bodily fluid that helps in the transportation and protection of the sperm. After this point, the mixture will travel to the prostate, where another 1/3 of semen will be added. Now there is a full load of sperm and semen. At this time, the Cowper's gland will secrete a lubricating fluid into the urethra to ensure safe passage of the sperm. Once ejaculation of the sperm has occurred, the male will then enter the resolution phase of Masters and Johnson's sexual response. In the resolution phase, the male's body will return to an unaroused state. Now we will actually go on to discuss the female anatomy and how it relates to Masters and Johnson's sexual response cycle. During the excitement phase, the female will begin to produce a lubricant. This lubricant is produced by the Bartholin glands, which are similar to the male's Cowper's glands. These glands are located close to the vaginal opening. The vagina itself is an internal structure that will encompass the penis during sexual intercourse. Masters and Johnson also state that the uterus will become elevated during this phase. The uterus, also known as the womb, is a muscular organ that allows for the development and growth of a fertilized egg. The external female structures that are involved during the excitement phase are the clitoris, labia majora, and labia minora. The labia majora are the outer folds of skin, and the labia minora are the inner folds of skin. The labia minora join above the clitoris to form the clitoral hood. Both sets of labia are sensitive to touch and are a source of sexual sensation and arousal. The clitoris is a bean-shaped structure and is known as being the center for sexual arousal in a female. Since we are discussing some of the external structures of the female sexual anatomy, the labia majora and labia minora also cover to protect the urethral opening, which is located between the clitoris and the vaginal opening. Unlike male anatomy, the female urethra is solely for the passage of urine. Now, going back to the part of the excitement phase in Masters and Johnson's sexual response cycle, the clitoris, labia majora, and labia minora are the three external structures that will become engorged and swell. Also, another important external structure is the perineum. The perineum is an area of soft tissue and skin located between the vaginal opening and the anus. The perineum serves as a cover for important muscles and ligaments of the pelvic floor. The pelvic floor helps to keep everything in a female's body in place. Now we're going to enter the second phase in Masters and Johnson's sexual response cycle, which is called the plateau. During this phase, the outer third of the vagina will swell, as will the labias. The clitoris will withdraw from under the clitoral hood, and the uterus will elevate further. Another thing that you may notice is the color of the labia will deepen, just as the color of the penis will deepen during this stage. The third phase is the orgasm stage. During orgasm, the uterus will contract, and then there will be rhythmic contractions of the vagina. The clitoris remains under the clitoral hood. The fourth phase is the resolution stage. Just like in the male, the female will return to an unaroused state. However, for some women, this will not occur until after she has experienced multiple orgasms. Now I would like to direct your attention more to the internal structures of the female that is pretty much there and dedicated for the responsibility of reproduction of life. The ovaries release eggs every month in hopes of the egg being fertilized by male sperm. Once the ovaries have been released, they travel through the fallopian tubes. At this time, if sperm are present, one of them will penetrate the egg and form a zygote. The zygote will then make its way down into the uterus and implant itself into the lining of the uterine wall, called the endometrium. Once this happens, the cervix that extends down into the opening of the vagina wall close until birth. On the other hand, if the egg does not get fertilized, the endometrial lining of the uterus will then shed, thus producing a menstrual cycle. So in conclusion, Havelock Ellis, Alfred Kinsey, William Masters, and Virginia Johnson are considered leading researchers in the field of human sexuality. Their research has debunked myths and has brought to light pertinent information regarding sexual behaviors, interests, beliefs, and functionality or dysfunctionality. These individuals changed the way that sexual activity is viewed for all Americans and those worldwide through different research practices and publications. With that being said, I can assure you that it is perfectly normal to talk and think about sex. Thank you, and I hope you guys have a great day.